discussion session underway. Keith, I believe you have some
Review of the agenda
comments to
items. Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Really only 2 agenda items this evening. We'll have the introduction of an ordinance amending the Mount Lebanon Code to include newly enacted ordinances or amendments to existing ordinances enacted since January 28th of 2025. This is our codification ordinance. We do this on an annual basis. Essentially, these are all ordinances that were passed over the last year, and we are simply just codifying them into our existing ordinance. We'll also introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 7, Part 4 of the Mount Lebanon Code that is related to the environmental conditions of property. It's the only 2 agenda items we have, Mr. President.
Excellent. Well then, we will move on to Ian and Greg with a bit of an update on projects and plans.
Great. Thank you very much, commissioners, and welcome to our 2 new commissioners at your first discussion session here. So we thought it would be good to start the year off and start off your terms as commissioners with kind of an overview of some recent planning projects that were undertaken, some grants that we've received, some grants we're looking into, and then some other current projects that are going to be either happening very shortly or ongoing during your first couple months, or those that are going to be upcoming. As we discussed during the budget process, the manager's recommended budget included a $67 million bond issue to do some significant community improvement projects, specifically at some of our parks and recreation facilities, as well as some of our other community assets like the library. So we'll discuss those as we go through as well. So we'll start with discussing some of the recent plans that were completed or are ongoing, and then from there we'll go into the discussion on some of the other community assets. We have some of our other department heads, staff office chiefs here that will also chime in for their parts. And as we go through, if you have questions about each project, feel free to ask questions as we go, because if we wait till the end for questions, then you'll forget, because we're going to talk about 20 other things. So Greg Wharton, who is our Planning and Sustainability Coordinator, is with me. Greg also handles a lot of our grants management and grants coordination work. So a lot of the grants we apply for, Greg is the one that actually pulls all the information together, submits the grant, and then there's a lot of work, especially with state grants, of filing quarterly reports and actually being able to draw down the money at the end that Greg handles as well. Okay, so starting off, we are in the process of some major community-wide planning projects. We wrapped up the Ascend Lebo Comprehensive Plan in 2024 that was adopted, and that laid out the sort of vision for the next decade for Mount Lebanon. Some of the recommendations within that plan included conducting an active transportation plan, a feasibility study on the south parking garage, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and then also an update to the zoning ordinance. And just from an overall planning standpoint, a zoning ordinance update is usually the compendium piece to a comp plan, because most comp plans usually have recommendations for changes to considerations for the built environment. So a zoning ordinance update usually does follow a new comprehensive plan. So this is sort of normal in the course of business for how we're proceeding with this. In addition to that, we've had several other community asset projects and studies. In 2022, we completed a Parks Master Plan. Last year, we wrapped up a site plan and recreation center study for Main Park specifically. That was one of the recommendations of both the Parks Master Plan and the Comprehensive Plan. And then also, building off of some recommendations that were in the Parks Master Plan, there was recommendations for studies of our street trees. Our Public Works Department maintains all 11,000 street trees within the municipality. So we're currently conducting a street tree maintenance study, and within the last few years after the Parks Master Plan, we also did an invasive species management plan looking at some of the larger parks and wooded areas and how to best manage some of the invasive species that at the time we did the Parks Master Plan, we saw were really starting to intrude on some of those larger wooded areas within the community. And then, as I mentioned, the potential bond issue projects that were laid out in both the manager's recommended budget and then the budget that was adopted by the commission. upgrades to the fields at Main Park, Sunset Hills Park, improvements and upgrades, library revitalization, and Activate Uptown. We'll talk about all of those projects as we go through tonight. And I should just note for, as Commissioner Silverman used to say, our vast listening audience at home, that the projects listed in the bond issue, even though they were voted as part of the budget for 2026, the commission here still has to actually go through the process of voting on issuing debt and finalizing the list of projects that are actually part of that bond issue. So what's in the current budget is a recommendation for a bond issue. This group will actually, at some point during the course of this year, probably around the April-May timeframe, actually be considering voting on issuing debt to fund those projects. And it takes 4 votes to issue debt.
Super majority.
Yes, correct. And then finally, there are some carryovers from 2025 projects that were started and just haven't been completed due to weather and timing of contractors and other things. And then also some projects that were added into the 2026 budget by the commission as the commission went through their budget hearing sessions, and these were voted on for funding as part of the final approved budget. Those were golf course improvements and the Greenhurst Drive sidewalk expansion. So we'll start with the comprehensive plan because as the planner, it is very near and dear to my heart, and it is our overall guiding document for the municipality for the next decade. It was adopted in January of 2024. We did some very unique things with the comprehensive plan. One of the biggest things was the 5 core sections of the comprehensive plan. The commission at that time was also considering a realignment of our advisory boards. We went from 10 advisory boards down to 5, and the commission had the vision to adopt advisory boards that aligned with the 5 sections of the comprehensive plan. And we were the first, and as far as I know, only community in Pennsylvania to do that. I presented at the statewide planning conference last year on how we did that. It was a very well-received presentation, and they actually had me back to do a webinar series on that, similar presentation as well. And then last year when the International City Managers conference was in Pittsburgh, I met with managers from all over the country. I actually hosted a group from Australia and New Zealand, and none of them had ever heard of anyone doing this where they aligned their advisory boards with the 5 core sections of their comprehensive plan. So credit to the commission for having the vision to do that, and I think it really set up our advisory boards in a good spot because as we constituted those new boards, it gave them a set of goals and a work plan to start working off of and saying, these are the goals that the commission has already adopted to say, this is what we want to accomplish over the next decade. And now, boards, please give us advice on how best to prioritize them and how to help accomplish them. So we do have a website on a page on the municipal website, I should say. It's just mountlebanon.org/comprehensive plan, but we have a dashboard where you folks can go check and see how the comp plan progress is going. Let's actually switch. There it is. So I've done presentations on this before. Usually every year, myself as the municipal planner will give an update to both the planning board and the commission, usually around the August, September timeframe, around the time when the new capital improvement program for the following year is released, as well as when the commission's starting to get into budget season, just to kind of be a reminder of here's what we've done towards meeting the goals of the comp plan the last year, and here's maybe some places where we want to focus on moving forward. So we do have this dashboard that not only lists out the 5 core sections of the comprehensive plan that are also our 5 advisory boards, but also if folks want to drill down into any individual one, then each individual page also lists out all of the specific goals and objectives and then action steps, and within each action step we have the ability to go in and add additional links so that residents who may be interested in knowing, okay, well you say this is 33% accomplished, what have you actually done? Well, here's some links to go find some more information too on those various topics. Sure.
The other nice thing about this is that, especially as a new commissioner, and you're trying to get up to speed with your role on the advisory boards, this is an opportunity to kind of frame and help them think about what they're undertaking, what they're discussing, and always using this as kind of that frame of reference to bring them back to these are directions that, you know, are in a framework that likely the commission will want to engage on and support. So I would just, it's a point of reference for you guys as well to kind of think about how to frame, you know, and guide boards on their journey.
Yes, and thank you, Commissioner Flynn. The other thing that I will mention is that with the capital improvement program, we have integrated the overall goals of the comp plan into that. So the CIP is a very large document, but within it's set up by project. And Greg is kind of the main point person for the CIP within the planning office, since we took over the production of that with the assistance of the finance office, but it mostly is a planning exercise now. But within that document, you will see that within each project, it lists out which goals of the comprehensive plan that project will help go to achieve. So this is very small. Let's see if I can zoom it in a little bit. There we go. So this one on the bleacher railing replacement had some concurrency with goals in the engagement section and the parks and recreation facilities section. So we've also fully integrated now the comp plan with the capital improvement program so that we can kind of identify on a project by project basis which goals of the comp plan those projects are forwarding and helping to achieve. And that was something also that I should mention my predecessor started doing back under the previous comprehensive plan. So we've been able to do that. Yes, my predecessor did a very good job in his role as planning.
Just created more work for you going forward, but thanks.
But we've now integrated the new comp plan with the CIP as well. So any questions on the comprehensive plan before I move on?
Just one note on the advisory boards as a general note. So when an advisory board makes a recommendation to the commission at the meeting, they typically take a vote, right? So I've developed a spreadsheet that's housed in OneDrive. The commission has access to it. I'll send you all an email to show you how you can get to it. But I recently took that spreadsheet, I shared it with staff liaisons, and asked them to just do a sort on it to pick out their boards and convey back to the boards the status of those recommendations so that we're trying to close that loop. So it will contain what the recommendation is, the board that made it, what the vote was, what the specific recommendation was, and then it has one for a status, and it'll either say complete or it'll say open, and it will give you text that indicates where it is in the process so that you can then communicate that back to your advisory boards so that, again, they're aware of what's happening with those recommendations that they've made to the commission. Not all of those recommendations need to go to get specific commission approval. You'll also see those. So if it's something that the manager has the purview to approve, if it's a recommendation from the mobility board to ask the traffic engineer to do a speed study on a specific street, I can authorize that. It's the expenditure of funds. They've already been approved by the commission as part of the budget, but that doesn't need to go to the commission for a specific approval for a speed study on a specific street. So we try to shorten those timeframes where we can, but anything that rises to sort of a policy level or a higher level always goes back to the commission for direction on how to move that forward.
So next we have the multi-municipal active transportation plans. This is a plan we're doing in collaboration with the Borough of Dormont. We hired Tool Design Inc., who's one of the nationally recognized firms in active transportation, to conduct this study. And one of the reasons it is both an active transportation and safety action plan is that a lot of the funding requirements for the federal SS4A funds require that you have a safety action plan and have done a lot of the research components for a safety action plan. So it made sense to both communities to do these studies in collaboration with each other. And so an active transportation plan overall is essentially a plan that looks at, I'll say, ways people get around the community other than driving cars. It is not superseding car travel, but just making sure that we have safety assets in place for people who are walking, biking, using scooters, using wheelchairs, anything else. And as my wife likes to say, anything that is wheelchair accessible is also stroller accessible. So that becomes also a very wide-ranging consideration when we look at making our community accessible for all users, that we really do mean all users, from very young children to people who may have mobility challenges as well. So we are in the process of conducting this study. We have been doing a lot of work since we had a public outreach, a series of events that happened in late August of last year. There's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes. So the next step, the consultants are going to give a progress update. It's going to be a virtual update, and members of both Mount Lebanon's Mobility Board and Dormont Safe Mobility Commission are invited to attend that. That's happening at the end of the month. So that's kind of the next step, is to give an update, and then they'll definitely be coming in to give presentations to this group as well as Dormont's Borough Council as we go through, and ultimately we'll have a plan that's produced for ratification and approval. And we're very excited for the active transportation plan, because there's definitely a lot of projects out there and a lot of interest. We heard during the comp plan process and the surveying that residents are most interested in walkability throughout the community. When we asked a very simple question of what do you like most about the community and what would you like to see improve, like walkability was the top answer for both of those, that people love the walkability of Mount Lebanon, but they'd also like to see it be more walkable. We have a very active and engaged community, so having considerations and recommendations for how we can think about our rights of way as we do sidewalk expansion projects like we've done in the past, or as we make other considerations as well. And this is really going to be kind of a guiding document for the Mobility Board for how they start to think about their processes moving forward, for how they take resident requests and just how they take other ideas for active transportation and thinking about our rights of way and moving those forward from the idea phase to actually getting a potential project in the budget. And we got a $50,000 grant from the Allegheny County's Active Allegheny program as part of that too. So we're very thankful to the county for that. All right. The South Garage redevelopment study. So this one, we did a structural analysis on the south parking garage, which is the one right next door here, back in 2023. That study said that we had about 5 years-ish of useful life left in the structure of the garage because of the age of the facility and just the general wear and tear of a exposed parking structure over the 60 to 70 years that it's been standing. So we contracted with what was WTW Architects. They got bought out by AE Works in 2024. They're one of the premier parking garage architectural firms. They won awards for what they did with the garages down on the North Shore by the stadiums. One of those was the Park Smart Award. They got a certification. It's basically like LEED for parking garages. So they had one of the, I don't remember if it's gold or platinum is the premier one, but they got the premier award for that, for one of those structures. Platinum, yes. And so I know platinum is LEED. I wasn't sure about the Park Smart one, if it was the same. But so that is one part of the consideration that we've been working with them on, sort of schematic plans for how to rebuild that structure. We've also been considering the, I'll say, overall footprint of the structure, because the municipality also owns the surface lot that's located behind the municipal building across what's colloquially known as Municipal Way here in the back. So considering if the footprint of the garage could be expanded to include some of that area, if we move the roadway over and expand over the existing roadway and maybe part of the parking lot to give us actually more parking within the garage. We brought on CB Richard Ellis, a nationally recognized real estate firm, last year to help with considerations for a public-private partnership as part of the redevelopment of the parking garage site. So the goal here is to be able to issue a RFQ, I guess technically it would be an RFQ, a request for qualifications, for a developer The development community calls these P3 projects, which stands for Public-Private Partnership. So to issue an RFQ for a public-private partnership, to have a development partner to consider building something on top of the garage, whether that be retail and residential mixed use, whether it be something like a hotel, whether it be some other kind of use on top of the garage. We currently allow a variety of different uses within our zoning code in the central business district area. And this really is a very unique project from a development standpoint because the municipality has site control. Very often with development projects, the municipality doesn't have site control and we're kind of at the whims of outside developers that come in and say, we want to do this on this property. With this site, we have the opportunity to choose a developer to build something that the community wants to see on this site. So this is a unique opportunity where the municipality has site control to do something that could be a transformative project within the central business district. And these opportunities are extremely rare, not just for Mount Lebanon, but just within the development community as a whole. So that is kind of the next steps in the process, is finding a development partner. And we're hopeful that our team of AE Works and CB Richard Ellis, along with the folks here at the municipality that we've been working on this with, can all put together something that gets some good development responses whenever we put out that RFQ. And we also just received notice at the very tail end of last year that we were awarded $100,000 from the Allegheny County Gaming Economic Development and Tourism Fund for the demolition of the existing structure. So that's a very good start because the structure is going to need to come down in some form or fashion soon. Within, I'll say, a few years. It is still safe to park in. For anyone listening, it is still safe to use. But we are going to have to tear down the existing structure at some point. So every little bit helps. And Greg, I know you were pursuing some other grant opportunities for that as well.
Yeah, currently we have a local share account grant out for $1 million. We requested $1 million there. That won't be decided on hopefully at the end of this year. I think September is the target date, but we're not too sure. And then there's multiple other funding sources out there. There was a mixed use pilot program that really didn't have a certain number, so they just said throw a number out there. So we put the whole $3.5 million out. So I guess it's a gauge to say how much money they're requested. But each year we'll be chasing more of these grants. So, but to be determined.
In addition to, Greg manages the majority of the grants that come through the municipality because they all have different requirements, different timings, different closeout audit requirements, et cetera. Greg also writes a percentage of the grants and communicates very frequently with our state representative, state senator, because quite honestly, that's the support that we really need that helps to move those grant applications forward. So he does a very good job of doing that.
Not without your help, Keith.
Team effort, everyone's involved, right? Okay, next up is the zoning ordinance and subdivision and land development ordinance update. So I mentioned at the beginning that this is a compendium piece to the comprehensive plan. So this project started in November of last year. We appointed OHM advisors as the consultants to conduct this project, and they have a team of sub-consultants as well that are also going to work on the project. So at its core, zoning and the subdivision and land development ordinance kind of lay out what the built environment should look like in the community. So there are two really essential parts of the overall municipal code. And what the goal is here really is twofold. One is to incorporate some of the recommendations, or at least consider some of the recommendations from the comprehensive plan in the zoning code and how best to do that. The other goal that we have is to make the zoning code more accessible to all users. So a lot of other communities have been able to do things with graphics or design and things like that. We're still going to have the text because at the end of the day, if somebody sues you over a zoning matter, the text is what's going to hold up in court. A diagram probably isn't going to hold up as well as text will, but having those diagrams to support what's in the text to make it easier for, I say all users, and when I say all users, I mean a general resident who might want to put an addition on their house or put a swimming pool in their backyard. Can they look at the zoning code or a diagram and understand what they can and can't do with their property? Can a large property developer understand it? Can an architect or an engineer or design professional understand it? So there's different levels of understanding it right now, the kind of wall of text that our code is. lays out all the regulations very well, but it's not necessarily understandable to all the users that are using it. So that is one of the goals of this project also, is to have a code that can be easily understood by various people of various knowledge levels who might be interacting with it. And within the last few years, we also moved to the eCode platform as well. So all of our whole municipal code, in addition to the zoning and Saldo, is all available online through the eCode platform. You can access that through the municipal website. And so I'll say that's a very good resource. And eCode is a national platform as well. So the other advantage too of using the eCode platform is there's a lot of web accessibility requirements that are coming soon, that are requirements that were set by the federal government that we're going to have to adhere to. But having eCode as the platform, they have communities across the country that all have to adhere to these same requirements. So they're going to be able to help make sure that our zoning code also meets those accessibility requirements as far as document access and what screen readers can interpret and things like that. The next steps in this process, the consultants are going to be issuing a coordination memo in mid-January, kind of laying out the plan for the first few months of the project and how various stakeholder groups are going to get engaged early on. This is overall, I'll say, the commission's project, because the commission is the one that has to vote to approve it at the end of the day. But the planning board is kind of the oversight board on this, because the planning board is the one that approves development projects, has to make recommendations on any zoning or Saldo changes that the commission considers. So the planning board and commission are tiers of the pyramid, I'll say, in the oversight of this project as well.
And just as a point of reference for Margaret especially, when we did interviews for the planning board and the zoning hearing board last year, one of the things that we were thinking about very much was the update to the zoning code. So we specifically looked for people that had experience in that realm, because it's pretty specialized to put on the planning board to help, so.
An opinion of the former municipal planner. We have a whole lot of ordinances and codes in the municipality. In my opinion, these are the two most important
Ones.
because they are the ones responsible for why this community looks the way that it does and feels the way that it does. And they will be responsible for what it looks like and becomes into the future. So this will not be a quick project. I think mid-27.
Yeah.
April of 2027, I think,
April
is the target.
2027 is
Yeah.
the target date, so.
Yeah.
And there will be a number of presentations to both the planning board and commission, including one in February coming up, that after the consultants issue the coordination memo, they're going to come present on that both to the planning board and commission, just to make sure everyone is aware and that the public's aware of what the plan is for the first few months rolling forward of the project. All right, I mentioned earlier the Parks Master Plan, which was one of the first big plans that we did in this slew of plans. So that was completed in 2022. That was done via environmental planning and design. So that plan contained over 180 total recommendations. There were recommendations for both system-wide improvements and park-specific improvements for each of Mount Lebanon's 17 municipal parks. And some of the implementation steps that we've taken since the approval of that plan: the main park site plan and recreation center architectural study. A number of maintenance recommendations have been implemented, as well as some capital improvement program projects and other projects throughout the parks that were just approved as part of the annual operating budget. The comprehensive plan does include language that supports the recommendations and implementation of the Parks Master Plan, as well as providing some additional recommendations on the Parks and Rec side as well. So the comp plan, because it came second, basically builds upon the recommendations that were laid out in the overall Parks Master Plan. As part of this plan, we did a recreation center feasibility study where we had some consultants come and look at the question of, is it feasible for Mount Lebanon to have a standalone recreation facility, an indoor recreation center, basically. And that was, in addition to the existing ice rink facility. The ice rink facility right now, we've done engineering analysis on it, and the conclusion is that that building, which was built in 1975 and looks like it was built in 1975, was constructed in a way that it's not structurally sound enough to hold a third story on top of the building. So building on top of the existing structure really isn't feasible. If you ask an architect if something's feasible, they'll give you the answer of if you spend enough money, anything's feasible.
Right.
But it's really not feasible to build on top of the existing structure. You would essentially have to construct like a shell frame over it and then build on top of it. But the answer in this plan of is a recreation center feasible was a yes if. And that was given because any site that we looked at all had trade-offs to it. So we considered a site, we considered within Main Park as a separate standalone structure in addition to what's there. There were trade-offs there because you would definitely lose a lot of the green space and natural area, and depending on how big the facility was, that sometimes the parking and access is already stressed down there. But it is centrally located. It is easy access for a lot of people in the community. We considered a, sort of, I'll say, generic site in Uptown, which was kind of the standalone of, if the municipality decided we had to rebuild the parking garage on our own and decide to put a rec facility on top of it, could that work? Well, the trade-off there is you'd have parking, it's centrally located, but you have some significant size limitations on what the footprint of it could be above the parking garage structure, as well as, and those size limitations potentially dictate the uses that could be inside of it. So how much utility is that? Plus, then potentially, at that point in 2022, it was the question of, there's a trade-off of the municipality could lose the opportunity for future development there with a public-private partnership. So there's a potential loss of future tax revenue and development opportunities and an opportunity to build housing and density and things like that if there was a rec center built in the central business district. The other site that was looked at was McNeely Park, which is over in the corner of the community. It's 23 wooded acres. There's a stream that runs through it that makes a valley, so it's basically like a V-shaped site where there would be a lot of fill that would be needed. It's on the outskirts of the community. You basically have to leave Mount Lebanon to get there, kind of like the golf course. And the trade-offs there was it's not easily accessible to people. You would essentially have to build a facility that you could only drive to. You couldn't get there. It wouldn't be accessible by walking for anybody. That said, that site had a lot of empty land where nothing is currently constructed. So that was why it was a yes if recommendation, because it's a yes, from a market standpoint, it would be feasible that, the market of need could support one, but there's trade-offs to any potential site location that we have available. We are not Peters Township. We don't have a 98-acre golf course that they bought and built a new high school and a rec facility on, nor are we Upper St. Clair that has, a giant park that they were able to build a brand new rec facility on.
St. Clair also got RAD funding towards the construction of that facility.
Yes.
There is a significant cost to a recreation center, which I think you could all understand. I believe ballpark number was somewhere in about the $50 million range, depending on what we wanted to do. So when Ian said it's feasible from the standpoint of you would probably be able to cover your operating and maintenance costs. You are not going to recoup the cost of the bond issuance. So that's a significant investment. There was talk about if that project was considered to move forward, potentially putting it onto a ballot referendum to give the voters, taxpayers, the opportunity to weigh in. That's significant of an expenditure.
Okay. And that also leads us to the Main Park site plan and architectural study. So this was one of the recommendations of the Parks Master Plan, because Main Park, while it is our signature park, over time was kind of put together in a piecemeal fashion, that it was like, oh, we want basketball courts. Well, we'll put them over here because we have some space. Oh, we want another tennis court. There's space. We'll put it, here. Or we want platform tennis. We'll put it right here. So one of the thought processes was, as we move forward, like I said, we're not Peters Township redeveloping a old golf course that we bought. We're not gonna drop this all in at one time. The goal for the Main Park site plan was to have a plan that we could work towards over the next 25 years and say, this is our vision for the park. And what, maybe we'll do one project at a time, maybe it's only one project every couple of years, but when things come up for replacement, right? Are we just replacing them in kind, or are we replacing them with something else? So as an example to that, we're converting a few of the tennis courts to pickleball courts this year. That was one of the recommendations of the plan, was to convert a few of the tennis courts to pickleball courts because there was a need for that. So kind of using that thought process of, okay, the tennis court needs replaced, does it go back as a tennis court or does it go back as a pickleball court? On a small scale. There's some larger scale recommendations as well. It is just a plan that provides recommendations. So at some point when future commissions are considering projects, my recommendation would be to look at the plan and say, okay, yes, we like this. No, maybe we don't like this. But just to use it as a reference point and say, okay, maybe this is something we want to do. Maybe this is something we don't want to do. But it provides a baseline of future thinking for what you could do with some different areas of Main Park. And the other part of the study was looking at the existing, I'll call it recreation center, ice center facility that we can't build on top of, but could we make some other improvements there? So there was a option to add an addition to the existing structure sort of out into the courtyard area that's currently concrete. That would add a new entranceway to the facility. That would add some interior accessibility, because currently that building doesn't have an interior stairwell that's accessible to the public, nor does it have an elevator. So for folks trying to get up to the second story from the first floor, they have to go outside and walk around the ramp on the exterior of the building and go in the doors on the upper level. And the second floor has not only our recreation department offices, but also has community rooms where a variety of recreation classes happen, a variety of events from birthday parties and other things happen, and it's a voting location. So there's a lot of use for that facility right now. To not have that interior accessibility is somewhat of a shortfall. So we would like to have that. I think the estimate on that project
10 million.
Yes, correct. To put the addition on was about $10 million, all in on that. That also included some other exterior work around the building to remove some of the grassy mounds that were done from a
daylights the
design
building
standpoint.
significantly,
Yes.
because the staff offices are all without windows and natural light, which makes my skin crawl. So this would help daylight those and make it significantly more pleasant place to work.
Yes, yes. So I will let Greg talk about some of the grants that we've looked into as kind of building off of this.
Sure. So, we received initially a $60,000 grant through Allegheny County GEDTF once again, and then also received a $100,000 grant from the local share account just for overall project use. I'm waiting to hear back from a $750,000 grant, hopefully soon, and then we have some other ones that are opening up here. There's a lot of recreation grants out there. There's the Greenways, Trails, and Recreation. That's through also DCD. They have a lot of grant programs out there. But I would say all kind of encompass. It's 3.75 to 4 million roughly is what we've applied to. So it's a rather substantial amount, but again, it's really up to the grant administrators to award us. So always looking for more, but again, it's a ever-growing project, and hoping we can find some funds out there. So, but yeah.
So now we move into some of the other plans that have been done recently and current projects. So I'm going to have Rudy Suko, our Public Works Director, come up and join me. One of the other recommendations in the Parks Master Plan was to do an invasive species management plan. I should mention that we do owe a huge thanks to the Mount Lebanon Nature Conservancy. They put in a ton of volunteer hours every year in helping to manage some of our invasive species throughout our parks. They've done a lot of work in Bird Park specifically, and they do a great job working in partnership with the municipality. So this plan was completed by Oikos Consultants in 2024, and then kind of handed off to Public Works, who also works on not only maintaining our streets and all the street trees, but also does work in the parks.
Yeah, so primarily we've been focusing on the 3 parks, Bird Park, Twin Hills, and Rob Hollow Parks. As Ian mentioned, the Conservancy and volunteers that we have do a lot of work in the parks. We support them with materials, pulling materials away from there. Phil Ovolio, our Parks and Facilities Coordinator, he does a great job with this. He's a licensed applicator for pesticides in the state of Pennsylvania. He not only supervises and organizes a lot of this work, but also does some of it himself as well to pitch in and kind of expand. And what we've done over the years, what we wanted to have with this plan was a comprehensive plan so that we're all pulling in the same direction instead of a little bit here, a little bit there. What really came from this was to focus on the areas that aren't too bad and the areas that are already kind of overtaken with invasives, to kind of wait to get to those later and kind of focus our efforts on the areas that weren't as bad. So that's really what we've done over the last few years. It's very important too, and I think the next phase and implementation of the Oikos plan that we received from the consultant would be to start to revegetate these areas. So the key is to control the invasives that you're aware of, remove them, and then have a native plant in its place that competes with the invasives, and that's really the most important part of that. So we're kind of in the infancy of this implementation. It's going to step up. The costs will be significant over the next several years, but again, we have the support of the Conservancy and other community groups. They've gone out and gotten their own grants. The Conservancy actually received a grant for materials and a plan to plant Bird Park off of Youngwood. Did a great job. I mean, it's awesome. So.
And the recommendations that Rudy mentioned are included as part of the capital improvement program and considerations in the budget process. I'll say there were notes in this plan as well that supported our deer management program, because a lot of the plan took significant time to talk about the damage that deer have done to the natives' growth in the park.
The understory.
Yeah, that's
Right.
kind of left room for a lot of these invasives to come in.
Exactly.
So there was a lot of support for the deer management program. And there was support for the deer program from our Parks and Rec board as well. They wrote a statement in support of that as well, just because they had seen the damage that the deer had done to the parks and wooded areas too. Okay, any questions on that? All right, so the street tree maintenance plan, I mentioned that Rudy's Public Works crews has a 3-person crew that maintains all 11,000 street trees, so that's kind of incredible when you think about it. The commission funded last year a maintenance plan for our street trees, so I'll let Rudy talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so over the years, we've consistently heard from residents, from the commission and so forth, that, there are times when there are delays in providing this service. And as Ian mentioned, we have 3 people that are pretty much dedicated to the forestry operation, that are pruning, removing, sometimes planting trees throughout the community. It's a massive workload for these individuals. So what we wanted to do was, and the commission approved this last year, was to have an independent consultant come in and take a comprehensive look at our entire operation. See what we could do better with what we have, make recommendations on expenses for either equipment or additional personnel to keep up, to have the ability to keep up with the workload. Our folks do a very, very, very good job. They work really hard. There's no easy way to do tree work. I mean, there's no ideal days, it's either snowing, raining, or it's 90 degrees outside and humid. So it's very difficult work for our employees, but they do yeoman's work. They come in every day and do their job. So we want to look at ways to possibly make it easier for them using technology, other things that could potentially make their job better and more productive and safer for the employees as well. time. So that's kind of where we're at. We're actually going to meet with the Davy Resource Group was awarded the contract based on an RFP that they submitted. We had two firms submit the submittals last year. They were approved. We're meeting Thursday morning as a kickoff meeting. We were hoping to get started a little earlier last year, but they had some resource issues. They were committed to a couple projects that they couldn't get the resources over to us. So we're getting a little bit of a late start, but we plan to have something back to the commission. They'll come in and present some of their findings here over the next several months. We hope to have a plan in place and something for the budget season at the end of the year. So hopefully September, October, we should have some guidance from that independent evaluation of our program.
One other piece of information as it relates to tree maintenance. This plan is focused on street tree maintenance, but that same forestry crew is also responsible for maintenance of trees in our parks and the golf course. So over the last several years, the commission, as they always do, has been very helpful and said, are there ways that we can sort of help with the workload? We've increased the amount of money that we allocate to bring a third-party forestry company in to do some of our dormant prunes and some of the larger trees that we may just not have the capacity on an in-house basis to do. When the storm came through this last April, we were able to go out and bring in some companies that had a crane, which we don't have, to actually physically lift larger trees off of homes. So again, very much a team effort and very appreciative of the fact that the commission has had the foresight to allocate funding to try to, again, ease some of the workload for public works crews.
And there's a schedule to it all, which is all in Rudy's head. It's probably someplace else too. But, when you get complaints about trees, you really need to talk to Keith Keith first, then Rudy, because then you'll know the schedule and you'll know how it works, because it's pretty systematic.
Yeah,
We don't have enough staff to have everybody doing helter-skelter here and there. This is the time we do this is the time we do that. There's a reason for it.
Yeah, there's certain times of the year that, from an agronomic standpoint, you can only trim oak trees in the winter when they're
Right, it's all
dormant.
the time.
Because you
Or
want to
kill
avoid, they could contract oak wilt or they're more susceptible to that. So right now, our focus is on dormant pruning of sycamore and oak trees.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we get a request in April or May, once they come out of dormancy, that request, unless it's an emergency, it has to sit until October or November of the following year. Because, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is Davies just gonna do the street trees, or are they doing the?
They're looking at our operation, but the focus will be on the street trees. And it's it runs parallel. So, you're still doing tree work, but you're not, actually, sometimes it's easier to do work in the parks because you don't have as many what they call targets where the tree can damage or fall or hurt someone. It's in a wooded area, so you have more flexibility there. And primarily, most of the calls that we receive, and we have 33,000 inspectors in Mount Lebanon now.
34.
We're up to 34,000 inspectors in Mount Lebanon. We get a lot of feedback, and it's like Burke Park and those type of things, hanging limbs over paths and
Right.
walkways and things like that. So we get probably, I've done the math here, probably 60% of our calls are related to forestry and tree type calls.
Yep.
And and then there's the other part is the garbage and recycling collection. But yeah, we get a lot of calls on forestry. So we're constantly triaging, analyzing. We've developed maps, GIS maps, so that we can kind of see where the issues are, so we can kind of cluster them and work on things at the same time to try and increase efficiencies and productivities. So we've done some things over the years that have definitely improved the service, but you can only do so much. You still have to get out with a chainsaw or a handsaw and still cut limbs and chip it up and haul it to the golf course site. So
We don't
Triage
take
and
down live
intentional
trees.
harm.
triage, and that's
We do not take down
TRI.
live trees.
Oh, okay.
Just because somebody's afraid, we don't take down the live trees. Sorry.
Yeah, we make that determination. We try not to remove trees if it's at all
Yeah.
possible. I mean,
That's the utilities.
Yeah. Is that the truth?
Yeah, it's
I know.
another battle.
Yeah.
So next, we have the projects that were laid out in the 2026 budget as potential bond issue projects. So I will also bring up Recreation Director David Donnell in here to talk about some of these. So in the interest of time, because I'm very verbose, we have a half hour left. So we'll run through some of these relatively quickly because the commission will see all of these again. Succinctness is not my strong suit. So we'll start with upgrades to Middle and Seymour Fields. Essentially, this project has a number of components, but includes replacement of the turf, which has reached the end of its useful life on those fields. Thanks to Rudy and Filivolio specifically, as well as David and his folks, for doing a lot of ongoing maintenance on the turf fields. We actually got a lot more useful life out of those, been like 4 years or so, because than what kind of the normal standard is.
Yes.
So doing the annual maintenance and ongoing maintenance on those definitely extended the life of those fields as they are.
When did we install that?
2014.
14, okay.
Come on up, David.
Okay.
Yes, so, and then included in this is replacement of lighting around the fields and potentially additional lighting on the Clint Seymour Field side of things. And then expansion of the parking lot, which is at the lower right of the picture there, the one that kind of goes down on the southern end of Cedar Boulevard. That's a mostly gravel lot as it is now, so formalizing that with clear boundaries and spaces so that people will stop parking on the grass and in some of the neighbors' backyards down there would definitely be an asset to that area and provide some additional protection for those residents that live down there that have, definitely let us know when people park in their backyards and park, outside of the gravel area. Additionally, there's some fencing replacement options and then some additional considerations that were laid out in the overall main park site plan. There were some recommendations for additional bleacher seating, maybe even using some of the small hillside between the Cedar Boulevard sidewalk and the field space to install some staggered hillside seating or something like that. So some other things we could consider. As part of the main park site plan, we discussed seating on the other side of Seymour on the large hill below the pool. But because of how the sun sets, that you'd be looking like directly into the sun in the evening. So seating on the other side is better for viewing the fields as well. So other things that are going to be kind of considered as part of the overall site plan, I will mention that because this is a renovation to a municipal facility, we've always held our municipal projects to the same standards we've held private development projects to, which means that municipal projects go through the same planning board approval, planning board recommendation and commission approval process as other private development projects. So we will, in conjunction with Recreation Department, Gateway Engineers, be putting together an overall site plan for what we want to do on the site, and then that'll go through the planning board for approval and ultimately the commission for an approval. And then obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the commission will have to issue debt to finance this project. And then once we actually have a project financed, there will definitely be a lot of coordination and collaboration that has to happen with all the sports organizations and school district that use this facility, because Seymour Field is their home baseball field, as well as just another number of other sports organizations that use it. So from a timing standpoint for this project, we'll have to make sure that we have a lot of communication and coordination as far as when this project is going to actually be under construction, because we want to, try and do it at the time that's the least impactful to some of the high use users of the facility. Did I hit all the key points, David?
Yes.
Cool. All right. Sunset Hills Park upgrades, also known as Brafferton Field. So one of the ideas here, this was also included in the parks master plan. We've heard from neighbors in that area of Brafferton and Fruithurst and the other adjoining streets there. Commissioner Petty, you may have heard some of these complaints when you were door knocking, that when there are events and games and things like that happening on the field, parking becomes an issue on the residential streets because people will, there really isn't parking there at the park, so people will just come and park on the streets, in front of people's houses, in front of people's driveways, all that. So the plan that was sketched out here brings the circle cul-de-sac is currently there, so this would bring a new driveway down the hill from the cul-de-sac to install some parking spaces next to the field space. And we'd have field alignment where we could still use it for a number of different sports types between soccer, lacrosse, other things that currently use the field. Youth football may have an opportunity if they have a smaller field size to be able to play there, something else. So this plan does, stay with the current squared off alignment of the field, does not return the little used baseball diamond that was there where home plate was sinking and was 4 feet lower than third base. It was pretty bad because of some of the erosion on the hillside. So we did make some improvements there recently, but also some stormwater management improvements are included with this as well. So same idea. This was also recommended as part of the manager's recommended budget to be considered as part of the bond issue. We would have to go through the approval process for the site plan with the planning board and commission, as well as coordinating with the sports organizations that use this. And obviously this can't happen at the same time as the main park project because we don't want to take two fields offline at the same time. We want to make sure that we have field availability if we have to move people from one field to somewhere else.
How many parking spaces are you adding?
21 based on this sketch plan.
Thanks.
Yes. And then this also included a recommendation to convert the current basketball court area to a half-court sized, I'll say multi-use sports court, and then have a small children's kind of play structure there as well. Rudy, David, anything else to add on that one?
We just also have to coordinate this with the sports organizations, considering the turf project is funded at the same time, so.
Otherwise, there'll be riots in the street.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Okay, so Rudy and David, thank you for your time. Next up, we have the library revitalization project. So we'll have Robin Vitek, our library director, talk about this. Robin presented on the overall plan late last year to the commission as well. So October, yes, thank you. In October. So for those interested in going back and watching the previous discussion session, there's a lot more information in that one. Robin will just kind of run through a high level of what the plan is right now.
So I presented to all of you last year. I talked to Commissioner Petty one-on-one, and I hope to do that with you soon, Commissioner Izzo, just about the project. It's something we've been working on for a while with the Draw Collective, which is our local architectural firm up the street. They've done extensive work with libraries and schools, including the public library of Steubenville in Jefferson County. One of the things they're wonderful about doing is ADA accessibility upgrades. I bring Steubenville up not only because I'm from that area, but because it was the last Carnegie Library in the state of Ohio to not be upgraded to ADA accessible standards. So they were able to provide that for the community and in just a really creative and wonderful way. So we're thrilled to be working with them. They've done initial drawings for us. They're working on a timeline right now. We're looking at about a 9 to 10 month project for phase 1. And we're currently waiting on to hear back from the state about our Keystone Grant application. We're told we will hear in March. We've applied for $750,000, which is a little less than half of phase 1. And that grant, they really look at, what you're doing as far as making things more accessible, more welcoming, more just, it's a lot about updating things to current standards and things like that. So the restrooms upstairs, you're all pretty regular library users, I think, so you're all familiar with our bathrooms, which have not been really updated since the 1997 new library renovations, which were almost 30 years ago now. So those will be upgraded. There'll be new entrances to both our courtyard garden, which I think are currently using old emergency exits, is what I think.
Yes,
Is what I
that's
think
right. That's what those are.
that we've done. And the children's library, which if you're a family with a stroller, you know it's very difficult to get in there. And working on the reference desk, one of the questions we're asked the most is, where is the children's library? Because it's kind of secret, kind of hidden. So we're gonna open that up. We're gonna get new circulation desks, new reference desks to make those more approachable and better, easier to use for the staff and the patrons. It's going to add an additional small meeting space, a reading area with a fireplace, and a sensory room on the children's side, which will allow for both people with sensory issues that just need a quiet space, or possibly nursing mothers, anyone that just needs a little bit of quiet time away from the busyness of the library can use that space. So it's going to be absolutely wonderful way to just refresh the incredible building that we already have. We're so heavily used, and we're very well loved, but it's showing a little wear, and it's time for these upgrades. And Commissioner Swaver Wilson has been with us through this entire project, so she can really speak to Draw Collective's input on this and the plans of the board and what we've talked about.
So Robin mentioned that they're waiting on the $750,000 grant application from the state. So the recommendation that was in the manager's recommended budget was for the bond financing to cover the other portion, the municipal match.
It was about
portion.
$790,000, I believe.
I thought you automatically got that when you were awarded Library of the Year.
Yeah, right. You would hope, right? You would hope. Yep.
All right, great, thank you, Robin. So next we'll have Eric Milliron, our Commercial Districts Manager, talk about the Activate Uptown plan. So this plan built upon the Commission's previous investment of around $4 million into the Vibrant Uptown Streetscape project, which included all new sidewalks, planters, streetlights, conduit, placemaking spaces along Washington Road within our central business district. And after that project concluded, we got another grant through the Keystone Communities program to help do some initial planning work on how to amplify that and build upon some of the key placemaking spaces within the district. So I'll let Eric kind of summarize where we are and where we're going with that.
Yeah, sure. And this is a multi-year, multi-phase next steps. So the total Activate Uptown plan is projected to cost around $9 million. So that's an elephant. The best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So we're phasing this over a number of years. So the first phase is really looking at the Clock Tower Plaza area. So just for the edification of our two new members, the Activate Uptown plan really is looking at places that are in the public realm where we have site control. Ian mentioned that, how important that is earlier, and it's just as important when you're improving these public spaces. So the Activate Uptown plan overall looked at Clock Tower Plaza, which is where the clock is, by East End Brewing. What I call the portal, which is basically the stairway that connects Clock Tower to Parse Way. Looked at the connectivity between the light rail station and the Central Business District, Parse Way, and then the big kahuna, the big one is Clearview Common, which is a pretty heavy lift. Where we're at right now is we're looking at Clock Tower Plaza and adjoining areas around there. So in the manager's budget and what was passed is we have $221,000 that we're looking at with the bond issuance. I'm going to be sitting down with Gateway next week to really start to dial in various aspects of that project to bring back to this commission for your support, hopefully, and questions. So yeah, and thank you, Ann. That's looking at the portal. So some of the things that we're looking at in this particular phase is sun canopies in the clock tower area, because we want to get better use of that. We're already starting to do that with live music and other things. We want to see more of that. Sun shading provides shade from the sun, but it also articulates the space in a better way and draws attention to it. If you're familiar with the GoBo projectors that have been installed along Washington Road, we're looking to do more with that potentially in this particular area. Broadcasting murals that can change with a simple change out of a GoBo lens. So that's something that we're looking to do. So those are some of the things you're going to be seeing in the coming months. So we'll be working again with Gateway to really dial it in. It's important to understand that the Activate Uptown plan is broad, it's vast, it's big, has very specific recommendations, but they're conceptual. So with this, now's the time when we start to, really tweak the dials and put this into real focus.
All right, thank you, Eric. Yep. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a number of projects that are also carried over from 2025, as well as some additional ones that were funded in the 2026 budget. So we'll run through those quickly. I may have some additional support from David and Rudy on these ones as well, but I'll try and run through them as best I can. If I miss anything, just yell. All right. So the first one, the tennis court lighting and fencing. This is at the tennis center, replacement of the lighting on courts 1 through 8, which are the main ones down along Cedar Boulevard.
Correct.
And some additional fencing replacement as well. We've been slowly phasing in fence replacement because you would not believe how expensive fencing is these days. So we've been phasing that in slowly over time. Like Eric mentioned about eating an elephant, that's kind of how we've been approaching the fencing replacements at the tennis center as well. So some of the next steps on these projects, the lighting should be completed in the spring. The fencing is being done under a CoStars contract, which is a collectively bid contract through the state. The state has a number of these for kind of general items that a lot of municipalities do, so the state will collectively bid these contracts and let municipalities piggyback on that. So that is, we're doing the fencing under the CoStars contract as well. So that should be completed in the spring and summertime down at the tennis center. Continuing on with the tennis center, conversion of courts 1 and 2, which are the first two off of the corner of Cedar Boulevard and Morgan Drive, that those were converted from 2 tennis courts into 6 pickleball courts. And that project is nearing completion. They got it almost done by the time the winter season hit in 2025. So the courts are ready for play with temporary lines, but the color coding and permanent lines, they weren't able to quite get those down before the temperatures dropped to a point where they weren't able to install them with the materials they were using. So they'll be back in the springtime once things warm up again, and they can get the permanent lines in there. And then we will have, like I said, the pickleball courts are operational now. They're ready for play. They're able to be used, but we'll have the permanent lines in the springtime. Okay. The pool filtration upgrades, this was one of the biggest projects that took a lot of commission discussion time over the last few years. You may remember 2 years ago, the pool filtration system had some significant issues, and really credit to Recreation Director David Donnell and his crew. They were able to rig up some things with some extra filtration to sort of pre-filter the water before it went into the filter that really got us through that 2024 season. And David kind of invented those on his own by just trying to figure some things out. So really credit to David for getting us through that 2024 season when we had a lot of those cloudy water days. You may remember when the pool was closing early and things like that. So it was a lot better last year in 2025, but the whole pool filtration system had also reached the end of its useful life and needed replacement. So it is currently under construction. You can see the picture of what's going on kind of below the existing pool deck now, even though it's the middle of winter. But we are scheduled to be completed with that by April, which would put us in line to be able to open the pool normally as scheduled for 2026. Anything to add?
They're going to pour concrete in the floor of that surge tank. That's what you're looking at in the bottom right-hand corner Thursday. So that should have a concrete floor. It looks a lot different than it does in that picture right now. So we're making progress.
Okay. This was another very recent piece of news that we received right around the new year. The state announced their Green Light Go grant funding, and we received funding for signal replacement for the traffic signal at the intersection of Bower Hill Road and Parkview Drive. So this is, if you're coming towards Washington Road, up Bower Hill Road, after you pass the hospital and go around that S curve, it's the one right at the top of the hill there. You can see from the picture the very old signals that are hanging off of the wires across the road. So this will put in the new poles with the arms that extend out across the road, and some other ancillary equipment replacements as well. So the grant we received was for $306,000. We're very thankful to. Yes,
It's actually for a little bit more. It's
Oh,
about
is it?
320 something.
320 something. Oh, I had the wrong number. Okay. So the grant was for over $300,000.
There you go.
And we're very thankful to our state rep and state senator for their continued advocacy for these improvement projects in Mount Lebanon, because this does help with overall traffic flow and pedestrian safety, because having the new modern equipment at these intersections also helps with pedestrians using the roadway and being able to have clear signals to be able to cross as well. So this was a project that was budgeted in 2025, but was contingent on receipt of the grant funding, and obviously we didn't hear about the grant funding until right around New Year's, so this will be a 2026 project, maybe 2027, because the lead time on steel items, including poles for lights, is a long time right now. I don't want to give Rudy a fit by trying to estimate how long they take, but it takes a long time. Rudy, anything to add on that one?
It's at least 6 months, yeah.
Hey, so when's the elevator gonna be fixed? I'm kidding.
There's one in every crew. We also did get some funding, I believe, through insurance proceeds, because I believe a contractor, somebody went through with the bed up
It
and
was damaged, right?
damaged, so
Yeah,
it's a combination of
nice,
funding
yeah.
to upgrade and replace those signals.
Get through those supply side things, we'll be all set.
Okay, and then finally, 2 projects that were funded by the commission through the budget hearing sessions, and then ultimately approved as part of the budget. Improvements at the golf course, which include the installation of forward tees at holes 4, 7, and 8. That's a picture of hole number 4 there. And I included that because also along hole number 4, that wooded hillside that you see there borders some residential properties. So there was some fencing improvements to the existing fence there that the commission also allocated some money towards. So both of those are still kind of in consultation with engineers and figuring out how exactly the projects will need to be phased to ensure that the golf course operations can still be maintained and all that. But we will be bidding those projects out within the next few months, and they'll be coming to the commission ultimately for approval of those contracts when we bid them out. And finally, the Greenhurst Drive Sidewalk Expansion Project. So this one was also funded by the commission as part of the 2026 budget. Letters were sent out to the 10 impacted properties along Greenhurst. We are having a neighborhood meeting on Thursday of this week to discuss the project with the neighbors. So that is at 5:30 in this room. So if any neighbors are listening, 5:30 in this room, you're welcome to attend. We'll kind of run through the high levels of the project so far. Gateway Engineers has been working on getting the overall bid specs together for this so that we can put it out to bid early in the year, so that hopefully we can get through here and get the project done before school starts again in the fall. This is the continuation of the commission's investment in our walkability and sidewalk expansion infrastructure. This was identified by the commission back in January 2025, so almost a year ago to the day, where the commission looked at, okay, we're going to do Woodland, so what do we want to do next after that? And Greenhurst and Lakemont, both in the Cedarhurst neighborhood, were identified as the next places where the commission wanted to install sidewalks. Greenhurst was queued up first for its connectivity between the hospital and Bower Hill Road with Main Park and the high school. So this project on Greenhurst is just going from Lakemont Drive to Summer Place, because there's a small section of sidewalk coming off of Bower Hill Road to Lakemont, and then there's sidewalks from Summer down to Cedar Boulevard and then up into Main Park into the high school. So this will kind of complete the missing section of Greenhurst. And then phase 2 of this project was the Lakemont section going from what's built on Greenhurst this year down to Kurt Drive, where there are some sidewalks also, which will provide some connectivity for the kids going over to Hoover Elementary that go up and over Larchdale, yes. It's been 6 years since I lived in Cedarhurst, so I remember walking it though. All right, so after the neighborhood meeting, we'll finalize our bid specifications, and then we have sent out those legal agreements to the residents. So for our 2 new commissioners, we did this as part of the Woodland project as well, that the residents have to sign an agreement with us to be eligible for the cost sharing portion of the project that's part of the adopted sidewalk expansion policy that the commission approved. So if the residents sign the agreement, then they only have to pay 10% of the cost of the sidewalk installation. If they don't sign the agreement, they have to pay about 100% of the cost of the sidewalk installation on their property, and it is scaled based on amount of frontage that they have on the street. So when the road curves and you may have more or less frontage, it is specifically scaled on a per property basis. So Gateway breaks that all down for us. And ultimately, this is the one important thing the commission has to do. Once we get the bids in on the project, the commission not only has to accept the bid, but also approve a resolution to order the sidewalk construction to happen and accept the cost sharing agreements that have been filed. So that concludes my presentation right on time. So, well done. All right, since you have your board and authority updates, I'll say if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me, let me know, and happy to answer any questions that you all have offline. Thank you all.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Rick. All right, boards and authority updates, probably not too much today. Andrew.
Yes, so late breaking news out of the school district. Mr. Jacob Weiland submitted his resignation from the Mount Lebanon School District Board of Directors at the January 12th, 2026 discussion meeting due to personal and professional obligations. The board is now accepting applications from interested candidates until January 20th, 2026. That email just went out. So that is news from the school district. Mobility Board has met. Things are already picking up. Again, always lots of interest in traffic calming, traffic safety, concerns with various streets, but working toward really building strategic alignment around the processes that we want the board and the municipality to have in place long-term, especially as we go into the active transportation plan wrap-up, which Ian just spoke about. The hope being is that we can get more kind of structure established so that there's more clarity of process for residents to understand not just street improvements, but sidewalks and all other rights of way matters, on their rights of way. So a lot going on there, a lot on the plate for mobility, but a lot of good energy as always. SHACOG now has a new executive director, Patrick Connors. We are all excited that he has joined. He came from Quaker Valley COG. Young, energetic, very thoughtful. He's getting lots of support from the managers from around SHACOG. We are thankful that the managers are stepping up to help them with that transition, and hoping to really support him as he takes on a very large responsibility that's very important to not only our municipality, but many others.
Finance doesn't meet till tomorrow night.
Okay.
And Mertz is at the end of the month, so I got nothing. Library too didn't meet in December, so.
Yeah, same with the resiliency, end
Yeah.
of the month, so we've no updates.
Outreach had their board meeting last week. They're searching for a new executive director. And their gala is May 8th, and the theme is Up, and Away.
And the Civic Engagement Board met on Wednesday, and there's a lot going on. The Residence Academy has started, and that's on Thursdays for the next 9 weeks. Monday is the second annual Martin Luther King Day of Service, which is a massive undertaking. It's at the high school from 9 to noon, and you can still go on and register now, I believe, if you want to be a volunteer. Let's see, we also have the Mount Lebanon Community Service Award, and that deadline is the 26th of the month, so you can still register for that. And we have a new community mediator that's been appointed. So I notified municipal officers about that. Yeah, and Mount Lebanon Partnership also met. There's quite a bit going on with that, which Eric has discussed, and excited to work on some new potential zoning issues as part of the zoning realignment.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. We will reconvene in the commission chambers straight away.